Welcome back. Alan, we were talking about democracy, and are we really, anywhere in the world, does really democracy exist, or is it an achievable target?
I think the system doesn't want it to be an achievable target. As I said, we have in the Western world the framework for democracy, but not the substance. Mm-hmm. And I think the direction we're going in poses a choice of two things. We're either in the Western world going to end up in George Orwell's 1984 situation, the police state total, or there's going to be...
We are on the way, isn't it?
I think in some important respects we are down that road. Or at some point there will be a peaceful revolution from the bottom up, mm-hmm. when people will take to the streets and say to governments, up with this we are not putting. Mm-hmm. Now, there's one thing in my view that just about all the people in every nation of the world have in common, apart mm-hmm. from their humanity. Mm-hmm. I'm a great believer in one common humanity, incidentally. But the one thing we have in common, we are all fed up and sick and tired of our existing political systems. We know they're bust and need fixing.
Right.
But they won't be fixed until we citizens get off our backsides and become politically engaged. And if that means taking to the streets in vast numbers,
right,
that's what we have to do.
Well, what is the alternative?
Well, the alternative, as I said, is George Orwell's 1984,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
the ultimate police state.
So will we be happier then?
No, of course we won't. How could you be happy in the situation of 1984? I am puzzled. I'm thinking of writing a new book with the title, Our Children Will Not Forgive Us.
They say they will never forget us. But
no, forgive us.
Okay.
Because in my view, the thing that most parents and grandparents care most about is the future of their children and grandchildren. Now, if people knew that as things are and look like going, their children and grandchildren mm-hmm. aren't going to have a future worth having, then I think they would become motivated to become engaged politically, to change the system. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm thinking of writing a book about.
Great. They always say that the children might forget you, but they'll never forgive you. Let's hope they don't forget and don't forgive. They remember us. Petrol and oil in turmoil. The petrol prices are going down. See, it has, for the consumers right now, it's very good. See, we can fill our tanks with less money. But what far-reaching effects will it have on the politics of Middle East and we, the consumers in the West of oil?
Well, the experts that I've been listening to are saying, they seem to be in agreement, that the price of oil will go up again, but possibly not for some time. Mm-hmm. But for me, the fascinating question is this replacement, fracking,
yeah,
which America is counting on. Now, for as many experts who say fracking is sensational, there are an equal number who say it's catastrophic.
Yep, yep.
And it's going to fail.
There's very strong lobby against it.
Yeah, yeah. Right now, it seems to me it's a problem, particularly Iran. I mean, Iran needs, I believe, $110 a barrel or something. I don't think the Saudis care much because they've got so much bloody money stacked away in bank accounts all over the world.
Yeah.
They probably don't give a damn, actually. But I don't know how long it can go on like this.
I see that on your coat lapel. You've got a badge which is rather unusual. And it's coat lapel?
It is.
What is it?
It's a badge of the USS Liberty Survivors Association. Mm-hmm. So your next question is, what's the USS Liberty? It was the American spy ship mm-hmm. that the Israelis attacked on the 8th of June during the 6 Days War. They attacked it with jets, they strafed it, they bombed it, they napalmed it, they torpedoed it. And they killed 34 Americans on board and wounded 120 odd others. And it was totally covered up, and is covered up to this day.
It was not a submarine, it was a normal ship.
It was the latest American spy ship. Now, why did the Israelis... I mean, the Israelis said, oh, it was an accident, we didn't know it was complete nonsense. They knew exactly what it was, and the attack went on and on and on.
It was a deliberate accident.
Yeah, no, but why? Why was the Liberty there, and why did the Israelis... General Dayan, defense minister, ordered its attack, and he hoped to sink the whole thing. Why? Well, very briefly, President Johnson gave Israel the green light in 1967 to attack Egypt. No problem. But the understanding was, don't you dare attack Jordan, and particularly Syria. Johnson was frightened that if Syria was attacked, the Russians wouldn't be able to live with that. They could live with an Egyptian defeat, but not a Syrian defeat. Dayan always intended to take the West Bank and the Golan Heights. Now, the Liberty was there because the American defense establishment didn't trust Israel to keep its word.
They're spying on them.
So it was listening to the battle communications. Now, I was in Sinai at the time for ITN, and I saw something that I didn't understand.
How far away from there?
Oh, as the crow flies, probably 50 miles. But I saw something then, Neaz, that I didn't understand, but of course I do now. The Israelis had defeated the Egyptians very quickly, as you know, and Israeli tanks were being loaded onto huge lorries at great speed to turn them around to get them to join in the effort to take Jordan, the West Bank, and Syria, the Golan Heights. Now, the order for this turnaround was coming by radio from Defense Minister Dayan's headquarters in Tel Aviv to the commanders in the field. Now, had the Liberty been there and on station and listening, these orders, President Johnson would have been alerted immediately, and he would have picked up the telephone and he would have said to Eshkol, stop it, don't you dare. Now, as it happened, when Dayan and the Israelis went for the Syrian Golan Heights, we nearly came to a nuclear confrontation. It was only very tense negotiations on the hotline that stopped that from going over the brink. But
bringing in Russia in picture?
Sorry?
Bringing in Russia in picture?
Yeah. I mean, the Russians were indicating that, we can't take this. But Johnson knows around him. They had the hotline conversations and they talked it down. But, I mean, that was an act of Israeli war on their American friends and allies.
Right.
And the whole thing was totally covered up and is still covered up to this day. But there is this Liberty Association of the survivors. And, excuse me.
How many people survived?
About 150 to 200. And I had the pleasure 3 years ago of being the keynote speaker at their annual gathering, which is where that...
where was that, in London?
Comes from. No, it was in New York on Long Island. I mean, they are still campaigning for the truth. And the latest polls show that about 40% of Americans no longer buy the story of the Liberty, just as a growing number of Americans no longer buy the official story about 9/11.
What was the official American reaction to this Liberty incident?
Oh, absolute cover-up. There was one of the American warships. The first thing the Israelis did was to take out all the Liberty's communications. But there was one channel they didn't get, and the Liberty managed to get out an SOS to the Sixth Fleet, which was not too far away. And one of the American ships was in a condition where it could launch planes. And it turned around, and it did launch planes to go to the Liberty's defense. And McNamara, Defense Secretary McNamara, probably on instructions from Johnson, called them back.
So it was a kind of collusion.
Yes, it was totally covered up. I mean, huge embarrassment for Johnson, the Johnson administration, but they covered it up, and to this day it remains covered up. It tells you the awful power of the Zionist lobby and its stooges in Congress, and also the mainstream media.
Well, going back to the French or the Paris incident recently, you being a professional, experienced professional in the media, what do you think of this freedom of speech? My freedom of speech, does it have to be free so that I can get away with anything, or are there some limits? Is it self-imposed?
I would rather attack it from the issue of censorship. Now, there are an awful lot of powerful vested interests, that, be it the military-industrial complex, be it just politics, that don't want certain truths told. Sometimes the media challenges these, but I think the biggest problem in the media is actually self-censorship.
Right.
See, I think I said the last time you and I talked together on your program, newspapers don't exist to sell news. They exist to sell advertising space. And they're frightened that if they upset the powerful vested interest too much, and Zionism in particular, the advertising plugs will be pulled. So I'm not sure how you can have sort of total real freedom when the media is self-censoring itself. You know, when I joined ITN as a very young reporter many years ago, its great editor-in-chief gave me the mission statement in one short sentence. He said, quote, "Our job is to help keep democracy alive," unquote. I believed it then, I was gung-ho for it, but for years past it's been my view that the mainstream media has betrayed democracy.
To you, democracy does not exist?
No, it doesn't. As I keep on saying, we have the framework, but not the substance, because the citizens, the voters, are not informed enough about so many critical issues to call and hold their leaders and their governments to account.
Well, going by the same thought, this Iraq inquiry, see, what is taking so long to publish it? I mean, 12 years ago, the troops were pulled out and we disassociated ourselves. And we are still talking about the inquiry to be published. Now they say it might be published after the elections in May or even later.
The truth is now is that we don't know. I mean, the popular suspicion is that Blair has used extreme influence to prevent the publication of the secret notes conversations between him and Bush. And there is a problem to the extent that there is a 30-year rule in which you can't disclose things. Now, Blair denies it, as you know, but I have to say that I suspect a lot of the pressure has been coming from the Americans. Because in my view, I think there's a huge misunderstanding in Britain about Tony Blair. He was portrayed as Bush's poodle. I do not believe he was Bush's poodle.
Well, Alan, we have to take a break, and when we come back, we'll definitely talk about the poodles and the hounds.
Right.
Thank you for being with us. We'll take this commercial break, and when we come back, we'll continue with our discussion. Thank you.